Okay, here we are in zBrush, and our first step is to import the model that we're going to create the helmet on. So I'm going to go ahead and go to import. I'm going to go to my documents, head over to my zBrush project and bring in this model, which is a poser model, Boolean based object that I exported. I'm going to click from the top of the screen down, place her in the screen, and then I'm going to click edit and frame her in, and here is our model that we're going to be using for the helmet. Now, since what we're going to be doing at this point is just a helmet, we do not need all of the body. So I'm going to slightly turn her backwards, kind of lean her backwards, and then I'm going to hold control and drag over the entire body up to the neck, which is going to mask all of that. So by holding control and click and dragging over the areas, I've masked the entire torso, legs, arms, everything from the neck down basically. And I'm going to go down to polygroups and going to click on the option from masking. So what that does is that creates two groups, the mask group and the top head that's grouped. So now if I hold Control Shift and click on the head, the body is going to hide. And since I don't need it anymore, I'm going to go ahead and go to Geometry, Modify Topology, and in there I'm going to click on Delete Hidden. And now we no longer have that extra geometry that we no longer need. We can frame in the head, and we can work directly on this headpiece, this head part. Alright, so now we have the head right here. It's nicely cut down. There's no excess body, so we can quickly turn the head around as we work. So the first thing is I want to get a base of the top of the head, and to create our beginning mesh that we're going to start creating the helmet from. So once again, I'm going to reduce the size of the brush here a little bit, and I'm going to hold control and mask. I'm going to go ahead and activate symmetry. So I'm going to click X, and now I have symmetry from side to side. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of fill in. And I noticed that what I'm doing right now, the polygons are just too big right now. The resolution is too rough for what I want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and just clear the masking. I just go to masking. I'm going to go ahead and clear it. And I'll go to geometry. You can go to weld points in geometry, modify topology, weld points, and then you go and divide, and then the model will stay together. I'm going to go ahead and subdivide 4 times there, and since this is just serving as a base, I'm just going to go ahead and delete the lower resolution. So now we have the head's a little bit better resolution. I'm going to go ahead and mask, so I'm going to hold control and mask the area where I want to extract to create the helmet. So we'll go ahead and paint over the top of the head, increase the size of the brush now. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and go to Sub Tool, and I'm going to duplicate. Now we have 2. make sure the top one is selected, the bottom one is turned off. Then we're going to scroll down to polygroups, and we're going to use our function here from masking one more time. We're going to go ahead and go to masking and clear it. Then I'm going to Control Shift and click on the top of the head, and you'll notice that now we have extracted that head cap. And we're going to clear, we already cleared the masking, so we can go to Geometry, Modify Topology, Delete Hidden. So that extra part of the face and bottom of the head is gone. Okay, so now that we have this here, I'm going to go ahead and go over to Subtool and turn the other head back on, and now you'll notice that we have that head cap on the original head. And at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reshape this to be more of a base to create helmets with. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move to the Move tool and increase the brush size a little bit, and I'm going to start reshaping. Just going to start moving some of these things down. Just kind of sculpting a shape that actually goes over the entire head. So just go ahead and pull until you've covered all the area where you think the helmet you want to create is going to be covering. Make sure you do not have any. Try to imagine, if you want to kind of see the head underneath, you can turn on transparency, and that will kind of show you the shape of the head under. The only thing you do not want to have is here we can start giving it a little bit of an oversize over the head, because helmets are not skin tight. Here we go. Make sure you do not have any poke through, so go ahead and sculpt on your helmet until you have a full covering of the head. And go ahead and shape it. If you think the shape needs some work, you can go ahead and work on it. Once you have your basic shape here, I'm going to turn off the transparency, see what more or less what it looks like. So that's what I have right now. Now don't worry at this point if the edge down here doesn't look perfect or whatever. Remember, this is kind of like a base mesh we're going to use to create the model. So don't worry about it at this point. So now what we need to do is we need to remesh this, because if we look at the polygons here, this is a disaster. We definitely do not want to use this the way it is at this point. So we're going to go back to Geometry. We're going to go to zRemesher. Okay. And in zRemesher, what we're going to do is we're going to go we're going to leave it at 5. The value of 5 here, which will create a nice dense mesh, but it won't be too crazy. So we have symmetry turned on, so it's going to make it even side to side, all symmetrical. So we'll go ahead and click on zRemesh. Notice that before we do that, we have Adaptive is turned on. This is going to try to keep this shape while it works. And the higher you put this number, the adapted size, is the more accurate it will try to stay to this form as it creates your new polygon structure. Okay, so we'll go ahead and click zRemesh. And we have a progress bar across the top of the screen. You see recreating a new mesh for this shape. and that is done. I'm going to go ahead and do it one more time, and I'm going to keep doing it until some of the uglies on this side are taken care of. And looks like I missed the back over here, bringing it down, so let's fix that. I'm going to go ahead and bring that down. Kind of reshape that to what I originally wanted. I'm going to go ahead, in this case I'm going to lower the size of the brush, and I'm going to press shift, bring down the intensity, and smooth the back of this thing over here a little bit so that it gets a little bit smoother. And I'm going to go ahead and click see remesh one more time. And that's all I'm going to do at this point on this shape. If you want to, remember you do have smoothing, so you can go ahead and hold shift and smooth over some of the areas if you want to make them a little smoother, a little bit nicer. There. Now we have a base mesh that we're going to use. So I'm going to go ahead and go to back up here in geometry. We're going to go ahead and divide that. And if you do get any poke throughs, make sure you delete the lower after you subdivide. And then if you get any small poke throughs or anything like that, fix that. So we still have the move tool on. Make sure your brush is around this size, and just bring those small poke throughs out. There we go. Alright, so now we're going to put the transparency back on. We can see the head inside the shape. There we go. And now we can start to design the type of helmet that we're going to be making. So I'm thinking of some kind of really ornate type of brows and cheek plates and jaw protecting plates going around the ears, around the back of the head, and then maybe a leather part on the top of the head, and maybe some lames going back and forth between the frames and stuff like that to protect the head. And we'll see what happens. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to draw the design onto the masked area, onto the area here, but with transparency on, so we can see where the face is, so we can design it around the face. So let's bring down our maybe to 2, really small draw size, because we're actually going to draw. And we're going to hold control, and we're going to begin to mask the shape that we want to form. So I'm going to go ahead and start detailing this. And this is where you can get creative with what you're going to do. So here we go. Let me move over this way a little bit. Okay, so this is the jaw plate over here, coming down here to protect the side of the face. Here's our ear, so we're going to come over here, stop right around here, then go around. Something of this sort. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and bring this to about there. Okay, going back to the front of the head over here, I'm going to see maybe here it's got like a point. And let me erase this part right here. So I'm holding Control and Alt to do negative masking, so I can remove the masking. There we go. There is the basic shape of that section. Now if you want to clean it up, you can do negative masking again. You hold Control and Alt and then go back in here and kind of do any kind of cleanup you might want to do. Okay, so I think this is too thin there, so I'm going to go to a size 1 brush and then come back in here and try to make this a little bit more rounded. There we go. And this is where you can let your creativity come in. You can create some as interesting as you want your item to be. So if I go to 1, for example, with the brush size, I can come over here and negative brush and clean up. Maybe leave an opening here. Maybe I can leave another one. So I am going to go ahead and now take away transparency. Now we can see the shape that we have right there. And we're going to go to Subtool. We want to make sure that we duplicate this before we proceed. So we're going to go ahead and duplicate. Turn the bottom one off. And make sure that the top one is highlighted. So we click on the top one. Turn off the bottom one. And we now scroll down to, once again, we go to Polygroups from Masking. And we hold Control Shift and click on the shaded masked area. That's going to hide everything else and just keep that piece selected. At this point, we'll scroll down a little bit, go to Masking and clear the mask. Then we'll go to Geometry and we are going to go to Modify Topology and we're going to delete the hidden. Okay, so now that we've done that, we have cleared out all the extra of the base and we only have this frame built in. We're going to go to Edge Loop, still in Geometry, Edge Loop, and then we go down to this little section over here for panel loops. And the first step you want to do, since this is a 3D model, we really do not need the inside wall because it's always going to be rendered from the outside, and we don't need extra polygons. We're going to go ahead and take off double. Okay, we're going to make the thickness 0.00, let's say 5. So that's the thickness that is going to create the loops, the panels. And the polish, we want to clean up all these edges. So I'm going to bring up the polish to around 60. Okay, once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and click Panel Loops. And notice that this will build the model out with thickness and give us that frame looking. Now, I believe just by looking at it, I think it's way too thick. So I'm going to go ahead and do an undo here real quick. Just Control Z. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring the thickness down to 0.003. So I'm going to go ahead and click Panel Loops. And that looks a little bit better. It's not as thick as it used to be. And here we go. So now that we have this thing here, the next step is going to be to go to our zRemesh, and we're going to decide now the target polygon count. So if we look at the polyframe here, we can see that this is way too coarse. It's not practical, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to change this. I'm going to put here maybe 2 instead of 5, and then I'm going to make sure leave adaptive on, and then I'm going to go ahead and click zRemesh, and that's going to clean up that mesh for you. And if you think it's still too rough, too coarse, then you can go ahead and maybe lower it even to 1. zRemesh, and that's going to keep cleaning it up for you. So I'm going to go ahead and click it one more time. There we go. And I'm happy with what I'm looking at right now. I mean, we could go in there and spend. Now at this point, I'm going to go back to subtools and turn back on this guy here that was hidden. Turn off the polyframe, and this is what we have right now. Right, so this is still masked. So while that is selected, we turn it on, and we're going to go down to masking, and we go ahead and clear the masking from that piece. Okay, and now we can decide any other parts that we're going to create for framing. So I'm going to go ahead and move over here, or what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and create the leather cap that goes on top of the head. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put transparency on, and maybe with the drawing size of 6. It's too big. 3. I'm going to go ahead and trace around our shape here, and basically just follow it all the way around. Make sure you overlap. Now I'm going to make the bigger brush, so maybe 8, and just fill in the top of this part here. Okay, so now that we have that done, let's turn off the transparency. Now I no longer care for this base. This is the last part I need, and I can reuse that cap. So what I'm going to do now is just the same as before. Polygroups from masking. We will click on the top, then go to geometry. Well, before we go to geometry, we'll go to masking, clear the mask, then we'll go to geometry, modify topology, delete hidden. Okay, so now we have created the top cap for that model. Now I'm going to go ahead and go to edge loop, go to the panel loops. I'm going to take away double, click on the thickness. The thickness will be 0.002. The polish, like before, will be 60. And we'll click panel loops, and that's going to give that leather piece the thickness that we need, so that it doesn't poke into the head or anything like that. So now if I go to subtool, I can select the top portion, the frame part, and I still have the move tool active. So what I'm going to do is, with a larger draw size, I'm going to work on this to kind of separate it from the leather part. Just remember that zBrush is a sculpting tool, so I mean you can modify, change, move, adapt anything at any time. It doesn't limit you in any way. It's a really nice, wonderful software for sculpting three-dimensional models. Okay, and if you want to reshape parts of your model, you can just start to do that. There we go. Okay, and I'm going to bring this out of the skin. I'm going to be very careful when you're reshaping, because we have two different parts. You don't want to reshape the bottom part into the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it alone, and later on, once I have all the helmet completely done, if it needs any reshaping to form to the head a little bit better, I will do that when all the parts are one, when it's all one model. Okay, what I'm going to do here real quick is I'm going to go to the cap. Notice the cap, we haven't done anything to the mesh, and it's very important that you reduce that mesh. So we'll go ahead and go to geometry. I'm going to go to zRemesh it, and in the zRemesh we're going to lower this down. We're going to go to 0.8 and zRemesh there. So now we no longer have that big mesh, and now at this point you can decide if you want to reshape that or do anything to it, or anything. So, but in this case, I'm happy with that for now. So I'm going to go ahead and while I have the top selected here, I'm going to go ahead and merge down. It's going to tell me that it you can't undo that, so I'm just going to go ahead and click to always allow it, so that it doesn't keep bothering me. And now I'm going to go ahead and reshape the whole model together. There's also another very interesting option here. We have the move tool, and then we also have the move topological tool. The move tool will move the entire model as you click, right? So if I grab here, notice that I'm moving both pieces together, the cap and the top. Let me undo. But the move topological will only move the piece that is part of the geometry you are selecting. So it makes it real easy to adjust the pieces separately, even though they are merged together. Okay, but we're going to go ahead and stick to move, and now we can reshape this to a more interesting form over the head. So over here I can bring this out a little bit so that it protects from the side of the face more. Bring it lower so that it protects more of the jaw. Bring in the nose piece here a little bit, bring it out a little bit here. Now I'm going to get a smaller brush size, maybe 10, that I can kind of straighten out the edge. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to Control Shift, click on the frame part so that the cap is hidden, because I don't want to edit the cap. I'm going to choose the standard tool and bring the size down to like 3. The intensity, let's leave it at 25 for now. Let me undo that. I'm just going to go around the edge to create kind of like a beveled edging. I'm going to go around all the edges, and that's going to kind of enhance the look of this part. There we go. Now let's bring back that cap. So I'm going to go Control Shift and click in the empty space, and that's going to bring back that leather piece. And using the move tool once again, the larger brush size, with larger brush size, I'm going to bring in the size because I think it's too wide. We don't want poke through, so we'll keep it there. At this point, it's just a matter of shaping the shape, the helmet to whatever you want to form. And this, basically just kind of shape it until whatever you want the object to look like. You want to protect a little bit of the neck area. You can bring this out some, the bottom part. Always work with your brush size, either smaller or bigger, maybe over here like 6, so that you can work in these details and smooth out these edges. Okay, so this helmet, basically the modeling of the helmet is now done. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom out a little bit. There we go, so we can see the whole thing. I'm kind of happy with what I have right now. I'm going to go ahead and now I no longer need this head. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. It's telling me that it's not something that can be undone. I'm just going to click OK. Now I have the helmet all by itself right here. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the plugin, go to UV Master, and I'm going to click Unwrap All. And this is going to unwrap everything into a nice UV map that we can texture. Alright, and finally, after using UV Master, we'll go ahead and select up here, we'll go to Export. And in zBrush Projects, we'll go ahead and create this. We'll leave Pauline there so we know that is Pauline, and we'll put here helmet. Delete the base part. Obviously you can name it whatever you want, but I'm just keeping it all together for the tutorial here. I'm going to go ahead and save. And this model is now ready for you to open in if you use any external mapping software. You can use Roadkill, UV Mapper, Unfold 3D, anything where you want to manipulate UVs fully, and create a UV map, export a UV map that you'll like to use in Photoshop or something like that. And I will cover that in another tutorial following this one.